Well, it's Friday afternoon. The Jacks came in, played Abilene Christian, and have already made their way over to Sam Houston. But I've got a treat today. I've got Angela Mooney for you today, a new coach here in the Southland Conference, and we always try and get a chance to talk to the new coaches. First, Angela, thanks for being willing to sit down and chat.
Yeah, thanks for initiating this and staying here and taking care of this too.
Absolutely. First thing I want to ask you is, when you became aware of this job, what was attractive about ACU to you? What was attractive about potentially coming here for your first head coaching stop?
A lot of it had to do with this is coming home for me. I'm a West Texas kid. I went to high school and college in Lubbock, and through my coaching career, kind of now that I have children, I wanted to be a head coach, but I wanted to be close to home. I either wanted to be at a place that I really felt my own personal family could be really happy. Not just me professionally, but my entire family be happy. And this is one of those places. And so earlier in the job cycle, the assistant position had opened up, and I said to my husband, man, I wish that was the head job. And we kind of laughed about it, and he's like, well, who knows, and so we just kind of let it go. And then one morning in February, he woke me up and said, hey, the Abilene Christian head job is open now. What do you think? And I said, I think I'm sleeping. Like, babe, it's early. And what's crazy is I have a good friend that was an AD here recently, and so I had messaged him and said, hey, can we talk about this? I see that the previous coach hadn't been here very long. I just want to get some feedback about what's going on with the program, and I know that it's a newly Division I program, and just where are they at with growth and investment in the program and that kind of thing. And he said, sure, here's my number, or give me your cell phone number and I'll call you later this afternoon. Well, about 10:30 that morning, I got an Abilene phone call. And my husband answered it because we were kind of doing some other things. And he said, the person on the phone said, hey, may I speak to Angela Mooney? He said, yeah, hold on real quick. And he said, I thought it was my friend. Well, sure enough, it was Lee Daly on our AD. And, it was a surprise phone call, cold call, but it went great. Right away, we were able to communicate about some things. And he gave me some really great feedback about what was going on here at Abilene Christian. And so immediately it was on the top of my list. There were some other jobs that kind of had been pursuing me. And immediately he said, you know what, let's see if we can get a phone interview. This is a Saturday. He's like, Tuesday, can you do a phone interview? Yeah, sure, let's set it up. And so did that, and then I was on campus the next week, and then the next week I was here full-time with the team. So it was really fast and really great, and it just couldn't have worked out better. Kind of some people say, that there's a plan for us in life, and God has this plan for us, and I think this is exactly what it is. I was at a place where I was ready to make a change at Ole Miss. I wanted to be closer to home, and I got exactly that here at Abilene Christian.
You mentioned Ole Miss, and of course your head there was Stephen McRoberts, who has ties to this conference, coached for several years. Folks that have been watching this for years will remember the great UCA teams that McRoberts coached. What was it about working with McRoberts, or maybe in a bigger conference like the SEC, did you feel like prepped you for this job?
You know what? I had known Stephen for 20 years since I was a player in high school. He was at Lubbock Christian when I was at Monterey High School. And so I had known him for a really long time. Whenever I was coaching college and club, he recruited some of our players from our club to UCA. And he moved over to Tulsa, which was in the same conference at UTEP where I was at the same time. So we just kind of had stayed in touch and went to Ole Miss together. I think the biggest thing at Ole Miss for me was being able to recruit at the highest level, be able to test the things that I know in the gym also, and believe that will that work at the highest level. And I think for me, it was just testing those things that I've been doing at maybe a mid-major for the last 12, 13 years to test it at the highest level. I think the recruiting experience that I gained there was huge. The contacts that I made, that kind of thing, I think was the biggest thing that I took away from being at Ole Miss.
When I talked to David McFadrich, who also worked with Stephen McRoberts, who's now at Mississippi State, when we were there earlier this year, he talked about sort of the development and the difficulty of recruiting in a state like that, where high school and club volleyball not near as developed as what you had in Texas. What did you see as you were recruiting coordinator there? Where did you go to? I mean, you had a little bit bigger footprint to go get girls, but did you see that too, that it was kind of tough locally?
For sure. Most of the high schools didn't even have volleyball. And so there had never been a player at Ole Miss on scholarship in the history of the program. And so, yeah, it was a challenge that you couldn't just go snag that great kid out of your backyard. But most of our kids came from Texas. Both Steve and I had really big connections here. In our last recruiting class before I left, 4 out of the 6 were from Texas. And so to me, it was nice to come back in and still have those connections and be so much closer to home. And there's kids in the state of Texas that want to stay here. And I think here at Abilene Christian, we have such a special thing that I think we're able to get some really great kids, and keeping those connections while I wasn't in the state of Texas was really good for us.
You mentioned in the first question about this is the first year that ACU is postseason eligible. And it's interesting, I think, that where you are currently in the standings is next to Incarnate Word, which is the other team that is newly minted here in the Southland. Have you sensed in your first year sort of a big anticipation for that, not just for volleyball, of course, but across campus that, hey, you know, the probationary period is over and we're full-fledged members? Have you kind of seen the energy change?
I think it's just a different excitement. I think there's these seniors who graduated last year. They laid the foundation. They were basically playing for just pride, that I'm going to be the best I can be. I'm going to represent my university, and I'm going to play to lay the foundation for Abilene Christian's future. And I think they did a really great job of that. I think this year there is a big excitement. Our soccer team is at conference tournament, won the first round. They play again this afternoon. It'll be the first, women's cross country won their cross country meet last week. And so I think it is exciting, and it's exciting across the board, not just for everyone. I think we've kind of been in the top half of the Southland Conference, but not been able to compete in the tournaments. And so I think this is just a really exciting time, and there's just kind of that anticipation is, what are we going to do this year? Now that it really matters, are we going to step up to the plate like we have the last, 3-4 years that we've been making this transition? And I think a lot of the sports are, so it's exciting.
You make a good point. During some of the probationary years, ACU would have had a good enough Southland Conference record to be eligible. They did finish in the top 8 many times. This is not the first time that I've been in this building. I think the viewers know this is a little bit of a split loyalty thing for me. My son is a freshman here at ACU, and I've been in Moody Coliseum before, but last night was the first time for a match to work. Do you think this is a facility that might eventually be a good host facility for a tournament? I know that you mentioned Lee DeLeon, and I know that he's got a very good reputation around the Southland Conference. Do you feel like ACU might slowly move towards the possibility of hosting some of these postseason type events?
Possibly. I think obviously as our program grows and we get better and we start competing consistently year in and year out at the top half, that would be something that I would definitely want to do. I think in the past, even as preseason, we haven't really hosted any tournaments, and I think next year is probably going to be our first year, and since they were Division II, that we've hosted a tournament. And so just doing that first, getting that preseason tournament, and then just kind of establishing our program, getting us up in that top 3-4 consistently year in and out. I think that would be something that we would love to have here. I think we have a great crowd base that comes and supports us, and it's just a fun environment here in Moody. And we joke, but we have that Moody magic, and so why not have that Moody magic at your conference tournament? So
let's talk volleyball now. 3 matches left for you, and theoretically you're not locked into the 8 seed. You could actually finish higher than that. We got a big bunch of teams at 8 and 5 now, but interesting that we mentioned Incarnate Word, because you do have a match coming up against them. They are behind you in the standings. You both have to play A&M Corpus Christi in the final 3. What did you tell your gals last night? You control your own destiny. I mean, if you're able to win out, then you've taken care of your business. Is that part of the message?
That's kind of it. We talked about last night that we were disappointed in how we played. How we came out was a slow start, and to see that we played the way we did in set 3, and then it was just kind of a battle back and forth and 4, and it was a disappointing loss for us. We've been playing pretty well. We had one of our starters out, but I said, you know what? We have our backs against the wall right now, and we decide what we want to do. And we're going to prepare today and be really focused to pay attention to every single play and every single point, and that we walk in the gym, we're going to play at the highest level possible we can, whether it's coming in for practice, serve and pass, or the match, because we want to control what we can control. We say that a lot. Control what you can control. I can control the way that I work in practice. I can control the way I pay attention to what's happening on the other side of the net and anticipating. So that's exactly the message. We control. We don't want to ever have that my bad feeling. My bad. We want to say, you know what, she was just better than me, and that's okay, because that happens. This is a sport. She made a great play, or they made a great play, and you know what, we're going to turn around and do the same thing. And so that is the message. One practice at a time, one match at a time, and if we take care of business, we're going to be in the place that we want to be.
I talked to Debbie Humphreys last night after the match. We always debrief a little bit. I think you kind of hinted at it. I didn't think that either team played at their highest level last night from what I'd seen on video of y'all and from covering us. Rather than ask about specifics the day after a loss, let me ask you to compare and contrast Sam Houston, because of that match opened up a lot of eyes that night when you took care of business earlier this week against the Bearcats. What would you say was the biggest difference between the way you were able to execute over in Huntsville versus last night?
Last night we really did not execute our serve pass game. The weeks prior, we've really been passing at a high level, at a high number, serving aggressive, and that did not happen last night. And so that was the biggest thing. And we've been kind of getting some high dig numbers out of Olivero, and that didn't happen last night. And mainly it's ball control. First contact wasn't as good as it was, and like I said, we had one of our starters out, and we had someone playing in a position that she really hasn't played since the first or second week of the whole entire season. And so with all that being said, I think that we competed really well, that there was some fight and some resiliency about ourselves, but it was a serve and pass game was totally different than it was at San Houston.
You mentioned earlier about sort of the feeling that, God has sort of led you, that you feel like you had a purpose to come here. And being a Baylor grad, when Baylor went to the Big 12, we were the only faith-based institution that was in the Big 12, still is. Incarnate Word and Abilene Christian, the only private Christian schools in the Southland Conference. How do you think that factors in to what goes on at this program? Do you feel like that's a challenge? Do you feel like that's a bonus? How have you tried to integrate the fact that you have a faith-based institution, a faith-based program?
You know what? I think it's a blessing. I think it's a bonus. I love the way our players care about one another. I love the way our staff cares about our players. And I think a lot of that comes from that we are trying to be Christ-centered. And I also know that our student athletes have a excellent, at this point, they have an excellent environment that surrounds them here. Great faculty and staff, our administrators in athletics that they deal with daily. Lee knows all of our players' names. We've been over to his house for dinner. We interact. The girls get to interact with his wife, and it's just
practice with you guys, right?
Yeah, as much as he maybe doesn't want to admit that, but I just think that it is a true family environment, and you don't get that at a lot of places in Division I. And one thing that we talk about is, yes, we've made this transition, but we're not going to change, and we're going to do things right. And I feel great about that. I am so thankful to be a part of this, and that I know that my colleagues within head coaches, we kind of all have the same mindset about how we treat our players and how we interact with one another, and that we really care about one another. And I think that comes from a lot of that. I think that we have an advantage in recruiting, especially with our sport. We're at a small private institution with a great academic environment, but we also have that faith-based aspect of it, where the girls are in Bible classes. They are in chapel. We are having team study, team Bible chapel. And just this week, one of our middles was able to speak at another organization on campus's chapel, and it was awesome just to hear her testimony and hear how she has decided, this is the way I'm going to live my life for Christ. And I could have given in. She has type 1 diabetes, but I could have given in to diabetes, and that is Satan trying to come over me and tell me that I couldn't do the things in life that I wanted to do. And I just said, you know what? No, go away, Satan, and I am going to fight, and God is going to help me through this. And that doesn't happen everywhere, and it's just awesome to be a part of it. It just feels so good, and just such a blessing.
That is really cool. I think a lot of what you said is what drew my son here. I heard a similar story about Shanna Spree over at McNeese State, who also has a condition similar, not a diabetic condition, but had to overcome a condition to be able to continue to play volleyball. And her faith was a big part of that too. Let's talk about players to wrap this up. One of the things that I know that we talked about a lot before we came here is that you have a very good blocking team. I think everybody knows the name Lauren Walker. I mean, she had over a block per set last year. She's blocking at that clip this year, but you brought in Lauren McNeil, who we got a chance to see last night, do some good things. Compare and contrast those two for me.
You know what? Lauren Walker is just a little bit more seasoned. She's a junior, but they're both learning our blocking system, which is new for them. Lauren McNeil is really physical. I'm really glad she's on our team, and both of them just work really hard, and they've really bought into our blocking scheme. And so I think it's really helped them. Not only are they physical, but they bought into what we are teaching, and it's just, those numbers are great. And even with our scheme, it's not always about stuff blocking. It's about slowing balls down at the net and getting touches, quality touches, and can we convert it into a dig? Well, most of the time, if you're in the right spots and you're doing things right, you're going to get a stuff block. And so that's kind of our mentality a little bit. But I think both of them just work really hard when we're doing breakdown, when we're in practice, and then just have really great eye work at the net. They see it, and they make great moves to get those blocks.
You know, we have a lot of good outside hitters in this conference. SFA is going to see two of them tomorrow, in Brooke White and Jordan Vaughn, that you've already played. I'll miss some here, but Haley Tippett at Central Arkansas, Reagan Rogers putting up big numbers at Northwestern State, Bailey Banks and Jessica Wooten at HBU. You feel like amidst those gals that J.C. Smith's still a little underrated?
You know what? I think JC's in a new role. She was a middle and high school, and the last 2 years of her career at ACU did not play all the way around. And I think that she has a high ceiling, and she's just starting to figure herself out a little bit, get a little bit more confident in the back row, being able to run that red or that pipe out of the back row offensively. I think as she gets more comfortable and more confident in her skills in the back row, she's going to be right up in the top of that list. Sometimes if you struggle in the back row, you have a little bit hard time get going again in the front row. And I think she's a great player. She's a great leader for us on and off the court. And like I said, she wants to be great, and she will come in and do anything that she can to be great. And so I think she's going to emerge. The more she gets comfortable, the more she gets confident, she's going to get at the top of that list.
Here's a side story for you. We'll ask Angela about Kendall Bossy. Kendall's mom played at Baylor during the time that I was at Baylor. So, Kendall, if you're watching this, at some point, I want to meet you. I want to meet your mom and see if we had any similar stories from. I thought about it at one point, but I just thought it would be odd to just walk up to your center and go, "Hey, is your mom here?" Because she was in college at the same time I was. So yeah.
Parent following, and they were here last night. They're pretty much at every match. So maybe you'll catch them at conference.
I was going to say maybe in Corpus we'll get this. I'll get a chance to chat with her. But Kendall is somebody that I've really liked watching play while she's been here. I like the sort of tall, big setter. Kendall's close to 6 foot tall. And just break down Kendall's improvement as you've seen her play.
Kendall's another one of those players that did a different thing in high school. She was not a setter. She was a hitter, and she came in. I think she had a really great setting coach in Bree Nesselhoff when she first got here. And I think Seth's doing a great job with her here now. But she is just improving. Her defensive game has improved. Her serve has improved. She's starting to get more comfortable and more confident in her distribution and her set choices. And she's going to be one of those players that, she's continuing to get better every time we step on the court. And that's exactly what you want out of your players. Can they get better every time they play? And she's one of those players that's doing that at this point.
Let's end this by talking about Amanda at libero. When I saw Chapa play last year, I thought, who is this freshman? Well, and I thought the same thing when I went over to Incarnate Word. Madeline Miller, they got a freshman over there in Incarnate Word. So break down Amanda's back row play for me. She's second in the Southland Conference, by the way, in digs per set so far. So maybe headed for postseason honor here.
I think Amanda's done a really good job this year of just growing into that position and maturing. I think we've challenged her. I think when I came in and took this position, I basically opened up all the positions. And I said, you know what, I don't care if you played 1 minute. I don't care if you played every second of every match that we've had here at ACU. And there was some times that she was challenged, and we would sit down and talk and say, hey, you can either respond and you can work harder and you can continue to get better, or you can say, hey, this person beat me. And I think we've challenged her a couple times this year, and she's really rose to the occasion. I think that she has such a high dig number speaks a lot to her, because we have a high block number, and typically if you have a high block number, you don't have a high dig number. And so I think Kool-Aid, our assistant, works with our DSs. I think she's done a really great job of helping Amanda become a better defender, putting her in the right spots on defense. I think Amanda does a good job of seeing it and digging that hard-driven ball, but maybe a lot of times she was maybe out of position, and she's doing a better job of now being in the right spots, seeing it, and really frustrating those outside hitters. That's exactly what she did against Sam Houston. They could not find a kill, and it had a lot to do with Amanda getting that cross-court dig. But she is evolving, and now we're trying to see, hey, can we push you to that next level? You can hit that, you can dig that ball that's hit right at you, but hey, how about that ball that's high, or the tip that's out in front of you? How are you going to make that play? And we're really trying to provide her with the tools that she needs to execute at a high level all different kinds of defensive plays.
Angela Mooney, head coach here at ACU, in the mix for a postseason spot. Maybe even if they can get past these last three, get in that middle mix and have this like massive tiebreaker situation go on with all of that. So, Angela, thanks for being willing to sit down. Great to sit and chat with you and meet you here, and we look forward to seeing you in Corpus.
Thank you, and thanks for your time. I appreciate it.